Hi, Teria, and welcome back to Guild Chat. Happy Friday. We're talking about Path of Fire today. I know everybody's shocked that we're focusing on that right now.
I didn't agree to
but
that.
this one, well, it's too late now because you can't leave your chair. Bobby, keep him from leaving his chair, please. Thanks.
Don't move.
This one is for those of you who may not have played Guild Wars 1 but are playing Path of Fire and wondering what all of the fuss is about with these familiar places and longtime players getting really excited about seeing these NPCs. So we wanted to have some of our longtime devs on today and talk a little bit about what some of these throwback places are so you guys get some context and a little bit of a history lesson.
Nice,
but not a boring one.
Old.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I'll let you guys talk a little bit real quick. Just introduce yourselves and talk about what you worked on that came over from Guild Wars 1.
Cool. So I'm Bobby Stein. I'm the Associate Narrative Director, and yeah, I've been actually with the company since Factions. So I helped out on Nightfall, did some story mission writing and other stuff.
Good
and
stuff.
then
It was good things.
yeah, sure. And then
All
in
the good stuff.
Path of Fire, I actually came on about halfway through the project to help with script revision. So everything from story stuff, but also to help Peter and other folks with some of the open world scripts.
Awesome.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm
We're not going to.
Peter
The Troy is
Fries.
not going to say anything, so it's on you now.
What's your
Peter,
turn?
everybody.
I was a writer for Open World on Path of Fire, but I started also during Factions as an environment artist, and during production on Guild Wars 2, I became a writer, and that's what I do now.
Nice.
Do you want us to say what we worked on that was?
That would be awesome. Yes, please.
So I got to work on a few areas back in Nightfall days as a level artist, like the Garden of Sebrin. Is that what we're going with? Is the
That's what we'll go with. Yep, it's
And-
canon now.
And then got to do a little writing for like some of the same areas in this expansion, so it's kind of neat.
Sweet. Steve?
I'm Steve Huang. I'm game designer. I was lead mission designer for Prophecies, and so all those trials in the desert and the ascension process. Those were game designs that me and a few of the other designers came up with. I was also lead map designer, level designer. So the initial layouts for the maps of all the Guild Wars until Guild Wars 2 release. So I know the maps pretty well.
Awesome. I feel like if it hurt you, Steve did it.
Yeah, if you like
Hurt
a
you
Prophecies
deeply.
mission or dislike it, it's my fault.
Okay.
Yeah,
So offended.
I like most of them. There's one we can talk about later, though.
yeah, Thirsty
So-
River. Yeah.
So when you guys found out we were going back to the Crystal Desert in Path of Fire, I'm curious about what was your first, oh my gosh, we have to do this thing. We have to use this. We have to bring this back.
Terrified. Terrified.
Man, I mean,
Why was it so scary? I'm
Well, just
actually curious.
Anytime we reach back into the lore or the setting, there's a lot of, I think, expectations from our fans, as well as from us. Things like what are the places we want to go or that people want to go?
Yeah.
What are the characters that either that we want to bring back or that we want to show evidence that they existed, that kind of thing. So it all kind of, it's like, what are the world building do we want to carry forward? What do we want to just leave behind as like, okay, that it's fine for that to stay in Guild Wars 1, but if it's relevant to Guild Wars 2, what do we pull forward? So a lot of those conversations happened, I think, when it came to, well, and Shuang and Peter can speak more to this, but like with the open world stuff, what are the kind of ambient things that are happening? What are the event designs?
As a fan, I'd want to know what happened to Augury Rock. That was be number one on my list.
Yeah.
I think on my part, there's also like you want to reinvent things and do a new version of it. Like we had a chance to take someone like Palawa Joko. That was is that a spoiler? I'm sorry. Can I talk?
It
about
is
him?
now.
God
You're
damn it.
fine. We're just actually that's kind of an important
fired,
thing that we
Peter.
should say really quick. We're not going to spoil the Path of Fire story for you today, so you are safe.
I just did, but
We're talking
we
open
have
world.
the entire open world is running around yelling about Palawa Joko, so
Yeah, it's
That's
yeah,
pretty
okay,
not
much-
really much of a
that's true,
surprise.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much from the moment you arrive in Amnoon, you hear people talking about him, and he's a big force in the area. But in the original Guild Wars, he was played as a little bit of a kind of a slapsticky joke, and I think that we wanted to
it's less
do-
of a joke now.
yeah,
Yeah.
we wanted to make him a little more
In Nightfall, you actually help him because he helps you. You help him get his bone palace back
Yeah.
in the desolation, so that
There's a little bit of double crossing.
yeah, a
going
little
on
double
there.
crossing. You help dispose one of his generals that kind of like tried to take over, and then he helps you, and that's how you help get over the sulfurous waste and these Jinundu worms, and then over to the Ruptured Heart.
So yeah, bringing him back, he's definitely less slapsticky now. I mean, there was a comedy element.
Yeah, but dark
And
comedy.
yes, and
I mean, he's running this horrendous
There's
kingdom
so-
that's like, his people are really repressed, and I don't know why I'm smiling, but it's really it's a terrible place, right? And he's a
You
big
look so
influence
happy
on
about
this. He's a big influence on this area, and you get to hear like about this like new political situation that's different from what we saw, 250 years ago in Guild Wars
Right.
1.
I mean,
So.
he comes back at the end of Nightfall, and 250 years past, he kind of takes over, diverts to the Elon River,
Yeah.
and his awakened people who exist today only know about him. They don't really know anything besides that.
Yeah, he's had generations since he was released to just mess with all these people and get them on board with his whole way of looking at the world.
yeah, like being an awakened is an honor
Yeah.
at this
In some
point,
circles,
which is
yeah.
in some circles, and it's to me it's weird, but you guys made it work. I mean,
That's their culture. So we they've it's all they've known for all this time.
yeah, I'm making this face. I'm looking at you guys like, how did you even make that? I mean, what were the conversations that got you there? Like, okay, this is what we need this culture to be like. This is what we need his followers to want.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think. Like some of the lore was set up, prior to Guild Wars 2. We did that like movement of the world, and there's a little
Yeah.
bit of a hint of what he's been up to. He's been diverting rivers, and
Laying
he's-
siege to Vabi, and yeah.
he's been taking all the sun spears and turning them into Morden Crescent
Right.
and that sort of thing. So we had
Little mad
something to
about that.
go on there, that he's probably been doing bad things to this
But
area.
it was actually a challenging design too, because in the early maps, the Awakened are definitely fully hostile, and
Yeah.
later when you get deeper into Vabi, some of the Awakened, the living inhabitants of Vabi, honor the Awakened.
Okay, I want to back up a little bit. You mentioned Augury Rock, how that was one of the things you knew you wanted to bring back, and can you give some history of what that is for people who didn't
Right.
play and are
So,
going, why is everybody excited
in
about this?
Prophecies, after you get sent by the Vizier to the Crystal Desert to ascend, because the Mersat are they're called the Unseen Ones, and you can't see them unless you're ascended. So, and they're leading the White Mantle, who you're fighting against. So you go over to the Crystal Desert to ascend, and there's 3 trials, which all culminate to Augury Rock. And so at the time, we weren't quite sure. We made it a little bit more freeform. You can choose which mission of the 3 missions you want to do in order. It's all to get the Divine Fire, the Gaze of the Gods, the Focusing Crystal, and then the Rune Circle over at Thirsty River, and then that will give you the Divine Fire to enter Augury Rock, where you would face yourself.
Yeah, it was a huge part of the story in way back in Guild Wars 1, where this was a big turning point for your character.
Yeah, it's the central point
Yeah.
where you become like, ascended, and then the story really kicks off
Now
at that
they're
point.
no longer the unseen ones.
No. Well,
But
yeah.
I can
That's
see
right.
how that would be
That's
one
a
of the
spoiler
first
for season
things.
3.
Oh no,
Well, at the time,
we might spoil some of season 3. It's
we
okay.
even talked about it way back. Like, what
Yeah.
if we could just have these unseen enemies, whispering to the mantle in the background, and
Not at all creepy.
but we, we couldn't quite pull it off in the right way. So it ended up being the way it was, where the mantle's kind of the visual front face of the Mersat, and then later on you see how strong the Mersat are, and you have to get your infused armor and things like that.
Oh, infusion runs. Oh my gosh. You had to
can blame me
upgrade
on
your
that
armor
too.
a little bit and make it less flimsy.
That's
And-
right. Because they had,
Oh my gosh.
would they have agony? Is that what they
Yeah,
had?
spectral
Yes,
agony.
spectral agony. Oh, that's
Never
right.
have enough agony.
Yeah, we always wanted it actually to be like spectral weapons, where you'd actually do special damage to them, but we couldn't do that quite yet, so we had special armor.
Peter, you had mentioned the Garden of Severin, and
Or Severine, if you will.
oh boy, we had this
I don't
whole
actually
conversation
remember- I
about
don't
how
know
to
what
pronounce
it's-
it, and I was like, oh, I'll ask Bobby and Peter. They
Yeah.
will know how to pronounce it.
You'd think I would have gone back and looked at our pronunciation guide since our conversation yesterday, but I did not. So I
Man,
still don't
all
know
right,
what
I
it's.
then-
don't even know if it's in there.
Yeah, it might not have ever been voiced at all.
Well, then
but
we just made canon.
in
So
my head, it was Severine, but I don't know why.
Severin works for me.
Yeah.
So that was one that you worked on back in First Guild Wars?
Yeah, and when I say worked on it, I mean I made the whole thing because, like,
do now.
Justin will maybe talk about this later when he comes on. But like the environment artists, we used to pass maps around, and we'd all like sort of iterate things. But I said this yesterday when we were in our pre-conversation that one of the last things I worked on in Nightfall was like fixing collision around like
Oh, that's
stairways
right.
and railings and that, and like right until we had like pencils down and we could stop working on it. But
The garden mission was great. It's like kind of a social mission. It was a party in Nightfall, and then it ended up being besieged by harpies, and you needed to.
It was a good time.
Yeah, but when
the harpies
Crashing
show
my-
up.
Yeah,
yeah, when we
crashing
laid
my
out the
party.
garden, I was actually looking at Islamic gardens and trying to at least pay homage to those a little bit with the colonnades and the central, kind of flow over water and stuff.
Yeah, that was actually one that I worked on with Colin Johansson
Yeah.
back when he was a designer here.
He's dreamy.
Yeah, he's so dreamy. Off somewhere else. But no, it was really fun because that was, I think, one of the first times where I actually was on a project early enough to where I was collaborating with a designer, and it was really great because,
Oh,
Colin
that's
always
so
had
cool.
this great energy, and we wanted to have fun with it. So there's a lot of goofy stuff in there, but it's like,
Oh, there's still Gucci stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there was back in Guild Wars 1. I mean, that was one of those kind of relaxed missions until the harpies showed up.
yeah.
Then it got a little problematic, but the player character had a lot of challenges like, hey, there's a mime and he's going to emote and you have to match his emotes. And there's a little kid who
There's a
wants
ki-
to ask a girl to dance.
Yes, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was
and
fun.
we brought back some of that stuff in that garden area. Casey Anderson did a lot of the writing in there and did some really fun stuff with like the acting troupe and everything that's there, and a lot of
Yeah,
that
what was
is
the acting
homage.
troupe doing?
This is an acting troupe, I think. The idea that we had for Path of Fire was that this area was going to be like the party at the end of the world. While everything's going on all around them, they're just like these nobles gathered around, like partying as if this is the last party they're ever going to have. Because Kralkatorix moved. Is this a spoiler, by the way? If
Open
No,
world,
not
you're
really.
fine.
So Kralkatorix moved down
It's like,
there.
I don't care.
And you have, who cares? And there's a god on the march, and there's like, the forged and the branded and all this like chaos around them. So they don't know, like it could be the end of everything. And so they're
Why not?
they're gonna put on a play. So
As you do at the end of the world.
yeah, so you can like help them with their lines and everything, and if that's the sort of thing you like.
Yeah, the vibe of the place is kind of the same. I did notice a lot more things trying to murder me. I mean, it wasn't just like, okay, everything's fine until the harpies get
It's
here.
still a party.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's just
I mean,
slightly.
everything in the game's trying to murder you, right?
This is
Mostly.
true. I've found this is the case.
It's a running
and
theme.
Yeah.
We have issues.
yeah,
Fat
I have some
eggs.
serious issues with the forged, by the way.
The eggs.
But
my gosh.
Egg Wars
returning
2.
back to some of the things that we wanted to bring back, and like when we looked at when we lay out any of the Guild Wars 2 maps, we look at what was there potentially in Guild Wars 1 and what would have survived 250 years, like the Lonely Vigil, the giant statue that used to be a skill challenge to get your skill points post level 20, and that had a funny story in itself, in that there used to be the statue and you'd knock it over to cross over to challenge one of the Forgotten.
Right.
But something was a little bit odd with this one prop, where from far away it would still look it was standing up, and so from far away you'd see it pop up and down.
I never experienced that. I always just figured, oh, it fell down while I wasn't looking. While I was coming around this sand dune, the whole thing, I missed a big thing.
So that was a bug that became a feature.
Yes, that's exactly how that
There's a
works.
bullet point on the box. Now with statue that
Dynamic
stands up.
statue
Yeah,
animation.
dynamic statue animation.
I need to find where that tripwire is and just like hop my character back and forth and watch
calling
it.
back, I mean, the original writer, he wrote the Flameseeker Prophecies like 13 years ago, and to actually get that into the game was really great.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did get that in. So you get to find like bits of the prophecies and reassemble it, and you can see the text of Clint's final prophecies for what was going to happen in prophecies.
Yeah, that was a really fun thing that I noticed that made it in there.
Yeah.
Talking about Augury Rock got me thinking something that you and I were talking about. You have, I mean, we've got all these amazing throwback locations, and we've got these whole maps that were in Guild Wars 1, but there had to be a balance between, okay, we're just copy-pasting maps over and making them look cooler. And
That's
here
most
you
of
go,
what we
players.
do.
Good luck. I hear that it's copy-paste,
Peter
but super
copy-pastes his
easy.
work all the time.
Yeah, that's all I
It's
do.
the
I just
same
change
scene
out
over and over.
words.
Yeah.
That explains an email I got earlier. No, Peter, this is a question I asked you in 2013. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But you still have to get the player, you still have to move the player around the world. You still have to guide them. And how did you take these assets and these people that were here and get them to help you with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the things, and
Had to be
I
fun.
know this is not like a story segment. I'll save that for another day.
Another story.
Let's,
a story
let's just
segment?
spoil the
But
story.
okay.
Stop it.
Everybody
There'll be nothing
dies.
to talk about
No.
in the other.
One of the things that I think was important, so Mo was the game director and Mike Z was the design lead for the project. And for them, and actually it's also something that Narrative believes strongly in, which is if you can find good, smart ways to kind of have the gameplay and the story kind of merge together, it just makes for a more fun experience. And it's the as Mo likes to call it, like the joy of movement and exploration and discovery is something that's very important to us as a company. So trying to find ways for the story to push the player out into the world to do cool things, explore, find events and other little hidden things just throughout the course of the story, you're likely to run into some really neat things that are going on. And like, and even in the case, I know it going into like later in the game where you need to, I won't spoil it, but like you need to basically go out and find some answers. And really you're just kind of put out into an area and you're not even entirely sure what you're doing. But the fact is, if you talk to the right people in the right order, you can kind of, get the fast track version. But if you end up going around all these places and talking to all these people, you'll start to find these funny little stories that are there. So depending on how you play it, it'll change. And I think that was one of the things that we, every few story steps, we were like, we need to get the player out into the world to explore, whether it's to get a mount or whether it's just to get into a new map area, or this is where Act 3 starts up, so let's get players over here. So that was just definitely a very conscious decision that was cross discipline.
Yeah, and look at all these great things we have. Let's just use them to move
and
things along.
to use historic places in a manner that makes sense too. Like the Tomb of the Primeval Kings used to be the entrance to the Mists, and so it's a natural place to go if you want to head that way. So reusing that and revisiting, it's something that now you can go into. Before it was just kind of a facade.
Yeah.
Until Abaddon tore it up and we moved it to PvP aisles. But
that's one of the locations too that's in the open world, but also in the story. Not to spoil the story, but
It exists.
let's
I
just-
mean,
let's just
there is a
say
story.
you
Surprise!
go there in the story, but you also can visit in the open world, and you see like a different sort of version of things that are going on. I mean, you encounter some of the same characters, let's just say, but it's different, the version of it that you see in the story. So.
Do you guys want to talk a little bit about what Tomb of the Primeval Kings? I mean, it was the entrance to the Mist, but do you want to talk a little more about what it was back in Guild Wars?
So the primeval dynasty that originally ruled this area, there were kings and queens actually, and you had these royal figures that were sort of anointed by the gods or whatever to rule over humanity. And there was Queen Nadege was one of them who founded the Sunspear Order, or she called them the Sunspear Guard originally. And the Sunspears play into our story, and you mostly see them. They're mostly part of the open world story. You don't see them so much in the story.
In the instances,
Yeah,
The instant story.
there's not many Sunspears left. It's
Yeah,
like
they're on the run. They're like renegades that are fleeing.
they're like the Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunspears, they were a much bigger part of Guild Wars 1. I started to say factions, and I was like, that's not right.
Well, they were
That's
protecting
naughty.
the whole continent. They were like their local military, I guess. And when you start Nightfall, you become a Sunspear. You join their order, and Koss and all those characters teach you how to take up all their magic powers.
Yeah,
and stuff.
talking about heroes, we do definitely have some callbacks to some of the heroes from Nightfall in
I like when
different
you say
ways.
callbacks, like it's just, oh yeah, we just mentioned them in passing.
Wow.
Except there's, yeah.
They had some
You
history.
find
and
their time
influence.
capsule.
Is that what we're calling it?
Yeah.
So which ones or which callbacks do we bring back?
You can find the descendant of Kos and Milani in the Desolation.
I think there's actually aren't there more than one
There might be
group that claim to be his descendants?
The claiming is important. And the heroes back in Guild Wars 1, like Kos, Milani, Talkora,
Dunkoro.
Can I trust you with this?
I
Or are
think
you all right?
he's good.
It's gonna weighted bottom. So
Oh yeah.
They were
Not right there on my
heroes
knee.
back in Guild Wars 1 that were NPCs that you could, I say earn, and that just sounds terrible, but that you could work with and recruit to come along with your player character.
yeah.
Right, that's when we introduced heroes, so you could give them commands to go to different locations, use different skill sets.
Flag them in that one
Outfit
dragon
'em.
instance.
Half the time it's like point them over here so that they don't start a fight.
Yes. Sometimes they got a little bit away
So
from
we
us.
go visit, the Ruptured Heart and the Lair of the Forgotten, old Guild Wars 1 locations
Yeah.
that you would expect, some Forgotten to be at the Lair of Forgotten. There was actually only one Forgotten left over by the Lair of Forgotten in Guild Wars 1.
Terrible lair.
Yeah.
We forgot to put him in.
But there's vestige of that last Forgotten at the Lair, and that's where you can find one of the heroes as well.
Nice. You were saying some claim to be the descendants, so this is like, yeah, he was really important. I want to be related to him.
Yeah, in my head it was
Who's
like.
around to say no?
Yeah, I grew up in New England, and everybody would claim that their family came right off the Mayflower, because it's like you want to say, yeah, we were here first, kind of a thing. So there's like people out in the
I
open
never
world.
did that.
Well, there you go.
Most people.
Everybody but Steve. What you need to do is go back and claim to be a descendant of Kos.
Yeah, so it's
And-
cool. Like if you say, "Well, I'm the descendant of Kos," then everyone will give you
Yeah, they had
their
a nice
food.
little, love story in Nightfall.
Yeah,
They did. That was,
Telcor was kind of on the side.
yeah, the little love triangle was
Yeah.
always kind of a. And now that you've mentioned it, you're committed to explaining it for those people who didn't play Guild Wars.
Right, so Kos was kind of a brash warrior, one of the Sun Spears, and Milani was a kind of virtuous and kind of hot-headed, but really determined devotee of the dervishes.
She was pretty great.
Yeah, and they kind of had this thing back and forth, and Talcora was princess at the time, and she kind of had an eye for Kos, but even Talcora realized that Kos and Milani belonged together. Yeah.
You stepped aside at one point. Wow, I haven't played that in years. I'm going to have to go
Yeah.
back and have a little revival.
All
But-
these
but-
feelings.
but in Path of Fire we got to give Telcor a happy ending too, so that was good. She everything wound up really well for her, and
Wrong.
yeah.
Never mind.
So,
Continue.
So,
moving on.
You're
no,
so dark.
who did that?
Who did?
Who
Who did
put
what happened to
Telcora
Telcora?
Yes.
Who
And we
did
can
the
talk about
Telcor?
what happened to Telcora, because open world is safe, so...
Well, though I don't
It's-
know. Do we want to talk about that? Because it's part of the whole the
Okay.
mount thing.
Yeah, she totally got a happy ending.
Yeah,
Wow.
it all worked out well for her anyway.
She's still there.
She's there.
She's there.
It's not okay. you guys. It's not okay. It's very much not okay.
Yep.
All right, so I want to leave you guys with...
Leave
Who's
us.
your favorite? Well, maybe
Yeah,
leave
she's
you.
just-
Maybe I'm out. I'm
I'm done.
No. I want to leave you guys with who is your favorite NPC throwback that's running around the maps? Doesn't have to be an important
Throwback.
name person, but who do you like?
Oh,
I like
don't
just
know.
blowing
I
your
don't
minds
know
at
why
the
I'm
end.
jumping in. You go first because you're sitting there.
Oh, jeez.
Who goes first? You can if you want to.
What I
We're
would
in order
say
of importance.
is, people will see it in the future.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys.
There's a future?
Well, not
Well.
for you.
You mean Guild Wars 3? So,
In a future release, people will see what I'm talking about.
I didn't know there were going to be future releases.
Are you talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
That I totally did that to be mean. So,
Hi.
hi.
Wait, did you use the right angle? Because I don't
Yes,
know.
I
if-
checked.
Okay. There are lip readers in the audience.
So, who's yours?
Well, he's mostly there by omission, but you talked about how everyone's talking about Joko, and I I have to praise Joko here because he's our favorite.
I know that chat is filling up with praise Joko right now.
Everyone praise Joko. Can I also point out too that anyone that played Guild Wars 1, which I really hope everyone out listening and watching this right now did that, because you're not really a true fan unless you did.
Yeah, and if not, go to our website.
Go buy it right now and play through it, and then then you can watch the rest of this. But
I'm not waiting for that.
all those people, if they played through the story, which real fans did, I'd like to say.
What is the end of this sentence, Peter?
Yeah, Peter, get to the point.
They released Joko, so they are responsible. I hope when they walk around this world now, 250 years later, they see
all feel terrible.
how that all turned out for everybody,
that's part
including
of
Telcora. And
look what you did.
Yeah, look what you did.
Do it again.
You. And to a lesser extent, you.
I have zero regrets.
Yeah.
Dunkoro, is part of that team, and he still feels.
Yeah, that's right. He's back again.
Yeah, he still feels some.
Hey, everyone!
He has to make
Dunkoro's
amends
back.
for that. Which is partly why he sticks around. But my favorite NPCs, I love putting because I worked on those missions in the Crystal Desert. I love putting in the Ascension kids, so that they would.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
So they would replay it, kind of retell that story in a fun way, and try to integrate some, Guild Wars 1 skills. Though I screwed up one of the barrages and preparations and things, but yeah.
That's a feature.
And having the descendant of Cosmo on it was really fun too. But those aren't actual characters. What I enjoyed putting in was some of the dialogue between the ghosts at the ghost guides near the Lair of the Forgotten. They used to be guides for another Ascalonian named Ruros, and they were tasked to guide them through the desert finding relics. But Ruros, was really mean to them, and they ended up dying in the desert along with a bunch of pilgrims. And
good job.
They ended up in the Lost of the Lair of the Forgotten area, but they still hate each other, and they still talk about it. So
so that's good too. Like everyone comes back in ghost form, and they're all still hateful.
And they're all still mad.
Just as cranky.
Yeah, that's nice.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more Guild Wars 1 talk and why it matters in Guild Wars 2.
So there's time to go buy Guild Wars 1.
We'll be right back. And we are back. We have we've added one more dev. Justin, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I'll let you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you worked on in Guild Wars 1, and then Pathfire.
I'm Justin Fawcett. I'm a map artist on the environment art team. I also started on factions and sat next to this guy for
Yeah.
the first year or two.
Started
Really
just
fun.
weeks apart.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You should get a what is it, a little badge or whatever, because I sat next to Peter too, and that really needs to be recognized come raise time.
I think they give us those little magnet.
Those little
things
that's
that
what I'm
we can-
talking about,
yeah.
right? Like, so
Achievement
it just
award,
has Peter's face
Achievements.
with a scowl.
We've entered the part of the show where we all start ripping on each other.
Nice.
Do you still have those DC figures?
Yeah.
12
Yeah.
inches?
Yeah. I
He has
used to have
quite an-
action
quite an-
figures
an
all over
impressive,
my
an
desk.
impressive array of 12-inch figures. Yeah.
You know, I stopped putting them on my desk because we move around here at the new office so much that, like,
Just keep all your stuff in a box.
Well, also,
yeah, it's not even
also, I
worth it.
remember an epic coffee spill too when I had to get them
That's
all off the
right.
desk. It's
Yeah,
really-
that was
What?
awful.
This is a story I need to hear
No,
later.
I spill a lot of coffee over the years.
I need to talk to you about lids and how they're great.
Yeah.
So,
on
what about
Path-
Pathfire?
Pathfire, I worked as map artist, one of the map artists on the Riverlands and the Distillation maps.
Awesome. All right, so we talked about this with these two guys and Steve at the beginning, but what were the first things when we started talking about going back to the Crystal Desert that you were like, okay, we need to bring this back. This is important. Stop leading the witness.
This guy.
Let's see, I knew Augury Rock was going to be a big
Yeah.
kind of centerpiece. Obviously, I remember actually working on some of those desolation locations, like the Bone Palace.
Yeah.
The Bone Palace.
So it's always fun to be able to, go back and
bones.
recreate some of those areas
That's where the
with
bone
the
throne is.
updated, engine and 250 years later. How does it look and everything? So it's
I like having somebody on who's worked with these guys for a long time because he just like keeps going. He knows.
Yeah.
He's trained to ignore
This
us.
is the only way anything's going to get done.
I really like this is a map art thing, but I really like the treatment on the sulfur in the Desolation, the way the light is coming up from below. It's really awesome. The color, the bright yellow color.
That's using some of our river tech, which we started using in the last expansion, and you can put different textures on it. So it's quicksand, it's sulfur or water,
Huh.
and
So that's tech that was after my time when I was on that team. So
it was so much simpler of those.
Peter
sound like
computing
you're over
the
there
tech
with
that's
an
after your
abacus.
time.
that's true. It was much simpler in Guild Wars 1. Like, all the settings and everything, we didn't have to worry about like what the weather patterns were, or what kind of particles were flying around, or
So that
lighting.
makes more of a difference. I didn't even think about that. That makes more of a difference.
yeah. And you guys you added like a procedural weather thing, right? In Path of Fire.
Yeah, we have more scriptable environment zones. as we
That's
call
really
them, so
cool.
that's-
That's
Oh,
something we always
really?
talked about. And
So, like, what are the kind of things that you have control over now?
Well, I mean, you can control the weather. I mean, it'll cycle between.
Control
What more
That's
do you
cool,
want? You
right?
can control the weather.
Yeah.
We'll
What
definitely
else?
be
what else could
using
you
it more
possibly
going
want?
forward.
But, like, can you give us an example for our viewers out there?
yeah, where can they go to see this?
Well,
This dynamic weather.
you'll
I
actually
feel
have
like
some.
you're aiming for something in particular.
And I'm leading the witness. No, I don't know.
You'll have sandstorms that'll start.
It's
Rain, perhaps?
Rain.
Yes, there's
There we
there's
go.
Is there a
brand-
rainstorm
there's
Is there a
somewhere?
sunshine
branded,
setting?
branded storms.
Bobby wants to talk about the rain. Is the thing. So
No, I don't.
no, I'm actually interested that you, and by interested I mean kind of salty, that you brought back the desolation and the sulfur. But it works with the skimmer, so I'll take it. But did you guys? I mean, we knew we were going to have that map. Did you talk about maybe let's just leave the sulfur sand out?
Do you want
Or
us to cut
did you
that
know
map?
that was?
Is that what you're saying? We could
Did
just
you know that was going to
flip
be
a
a thing
switch?
that you were going to have to work with?
Yeah, going in, we knew that we were going to be using various mounts and how they have different abilities, and so the maps were really designed around those. And so you get the skimmer in the previous map, and because it's going to be used so much more afterwards.
It dovetailed pretty nicely. I found the quicksand the hard way. I think a lot of people did. I saw a lot of yelling in map chat those first few days in Crystal Oasis about, hey, oh God, someone help me. This is not okay.
But then there's usually some reason to cross those areas, right? To get across the quicksand, and then you find the thing or whatever that you're,
Yeah.
this prize.
I want to go back and talk a little bit about the Bone Palace, and it looks. I feel bad saying it looks better. in Path of Fire, but most things do look
They had better
Oh, yeah.
materials to work with this
Yeah,
time
you have better
around.
materials to work with.
Centaur bones.
Centaur bones.
Yeah.
So many more bones to work with and do add-ons. Joko's got like a whole new wing.
He's done some expansions. Yeah.
But do you want to do a little bit of backstory on what the Bone Palace was in? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but
He made the original Bone Palace.
I didn't even realize that until I went back and to look at the old maps, and it's like, wait a second, I did actually this map. I always look. It looks like those giant skeleton heads are smiling because the way the eyes are. So it's
cool.
so they're
a
very
happy
happy.
place.
It's very
Yeah.
metal.
But it's been totally rebuilt over the years and gotten a few upgrades.
So this was this the core of Joko's domain? Was this kind of his place back in Guild Wars 1?
Yeah, it was his palace, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah.
kind of a given.
He has like some other central headquarters that aren't necessarily in Path of Fire, but
really?
He's kind of expanded his territory a little bit too,
yeah,
further
he's
north.
been busy.
Yeah.
So did you get to play with that and kind of have a little bit of creative freedom in making it better for Guild Wars 2?
Well, I can talk for a minute about the map creating process.
Yeah, please do.
First of all, I want to make special mention of the concept art. It's always started with the concept art, and it still does. Like I'll personally keep a few images on one of my monitors throughout the whole process, just for inspiration.
Oh, that's right. You have Guild Wars 1 up
Mhm.
on a third monitor just for
Yeah,
reference. Like
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a minute. And then, but a new process, part of our process, we started with these expansions is a kind of a map prototype, kind of concept map prototype process. And so, here's some screens here. I don't think we've ever shown these, but an artist will work directly with the art director and come up with, kind of translate the concept art into these maps. And so when I go to work on them, I can see, okay, here's the textures, here's how the new props are supposed to fit together, and it's all director approved, and so it just helps a little more efficiency
Look and feel
on the
kind
front
of
end,
stuff.
and because it does take time to come up with that look and feel.
Yeah.
And regarding, kind of recreating those original locations, I have Guild Wars 1 up on one of my monitors, and I can just go back and forth and take a look at it and see if the size is about right. I mean, you don't want to spend too much time on it because the most important thing is how the gameplay works in this in Path of Fire in this game. But like I even used a kind of a grid overlay of the older maps. And when you first start a map, it's completely flat. And so I just took a few hours and just kind of painted the layout of some of those sulfur trenches and things in the Desolation map. And so then I can go from there, and then over the next year or so that you're working on it, pretty much feels like it's been 250 years later.
It feels like we've been working here for 250 years.
I think we get an extra week at 250.
Wow, cool.
surprise.
There's
Yeah.
There are a few.
You're almost
It's
there.
between
Before
the
and after
10-year
shots in
anniversary
there.
and the
Yeah.
And the
250th. We get one more
you
week.
get one more week. So do you feel like you matched it up pretty well?
I think so.
I do. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
There was an area that was not. There was an area in Guild Wars 1 that was it the Desolation map that was not available? But we
yeah,
had that to
almost,
work with this
almost
time.
kind of the northern, third of it.
Scared
So
I
we
didn't
got
get
to
the right
come up
map.
with, I think it was Mr. Beetlestone who came up with the idea of a sulfur mine that's up in that
It
northwest
reminds him
corner.
of his backyard.
Yeah,
So
moving.
come on
stones
over
around.
and take reference imagery.
Ew.
And so that was a really neat. It was a neat opportunity to kind of imagine what was up there. And of course, it's been flooded since then, so it's a kind of a continuation of the previous map.
Joko's been moving rivers around here and there, and doing some landscaping.
He needs to not. So in Guild Wars 1, that was just the place where you went to scrape your nose against the wall for map completion.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Hug the wall.
Also a feature.
not
You can
about
buy Guild Wars 1 on our website, by the way. But you should have already bought it and played it.
So you can release Joko? Because
Yes.
there's a mixed message here. I mean, you don't like that.
There's a
we-
disconnect in time if they didn't release Joko, so, they have to have released Joko.
Okay, so while Peter does math, somebody get the man his abacus quick.
Cause and effect.
I want to talk about some of the map features that we ran around with, because you and I were talking about the teleporters And one of the things that I loved was this ghost at the teleporter. And for an achievement point, if you've come across it, you have to match up the flashing light patterns on this teleporter. And that was something that you had worked on. Because I didn't know that some of them worked. This was information that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
gave me.
In the Riverlands map, most of them are kind of ruined and half buried in sand, but Steve wanted to put in some working ones, and so it was kind of a memory game where it shows you, lights up in a different pattern, and then you match that up, and then you can use it. So, and then there's an achievement. I think maybe there's 7 of them that work. A few of them I added a few at the end of there were some long tunnels, and so there's actually an easy way for you to get out using one of those. So
that was kind of you.
I try to be. There's a fine line between challenging and frustrating.
Would you say you're not like Josh Foreman in that way?
I wasn't going to bring him up. I was. But,
he who shall not be named.
My jumping puzzles are a little on the easier, more enjoyable kind of.
Foreman.
I'm waiting for the door to bust in and Josh be like, I heard you were talking about me.
Oh, yeah! Yeah, every time his name is called, his ears like light on fire.
Like Kool-Aid Man.
That's
Oh,
right.
I don't think that happens with the
He'll come right out of there.
Plot twist, he's been back there the whole time.
Oh, God.
I do appreciate that you like to be as kind as possible
Yes.
when designing. Some of the dialogue that we brought back was either reminiscent of, and I'm actually thinking of the same ghost, because you talked to him and he's like, yeah, I was just standing here minding my business and there was a Hydra and did you need something?
That's right. He makes a reference to the Hydra killing him or something, right?
Yeah, I like that it's so traumatic that he just can't even go there.
Yeah.
But some of them have identical dialogue too, don't they?
Yeah, they do. The idea, I think, is that these ghosts are still reenacting these things that happen to them because they're bound to this world by whatever horrible thing they're reliving over and over again forever, which is it's a good way to.
So here's a little bit of an Easter egg.
Egg?
Yes. So again, it's not in the open. It's not in the open world, but it's not a story spoiler because I'm only going to give you a very little bit of information.
Okay.
There is a character who you encounter throughout the story who is from the Guild Wars 1 series, and people have started to theorize who this character is or was, but one of the lines of dialogue that this character says is basically, if it wasn't lifted wholesale from something from Guild Wars 1, it was very close.
Oh!
And we wanted to see if people could match it. So that's just a little bit of something there.
If you didn't catch it, you should get online and buy a copy of Guild Wars 1 and play
The strategy guide.
Yeah, and listen very carefully to every line every character says.
Hey, I
in the
have
game.
that strategy guide, by the way.
I may have written one of them.
Yeah,
Thank you.
did work on
it
one.
was-
Factions one.
Yeah.
It was
that's
helpful
cool.
for
I
a
It was
should-
little
out
while.
of date before we even put it out.
It was helpful for a little bit. Don't ask me for
Well,
specifics.
it helps you
please.
balance a coffee table if the legs are wobbly.
So since it didn't match up, are you going to refund anyone's purchase of
Absolutely not.
that? Right out of your own?
No,
Oh.
not
I
at
got
all.
excited for a minute. I thought I was going to get some money out of this.
You get some Bobby Fun Bucks.
Fun bucks. That's right.
Yeah.
It's got my face on it.
I don't want it anymore.
They can only be spent in the lunchroom.
They can only be spent like at the back of my car. Basically, I open my trunk and then you can redeem it with whatever is in my trunk.
These are things
I'm
that were
scared.
not in Guild Wars. Justin's like edging toward the door, except you're pretty much used to these guys.
Yeah.
Oh, but actually, funny thing, some of the ambient dialogue. So in Guild Wars 1, really the only voice dialogue that we had was in cinematics. Everything else in the world was just dialogue bubbles that would
That's
pop
right.
up. And having our audio team is fantastic. They can do sound zones that make it sound bustling and alive. And then what we can help with is giving the characters things to say. So like Amnoon Oasis. There's a lot of fun stuff that happens, right? And a lot of it is kind of serious and grounded in what's happening in the story, and some of it's a little fun. So I know one of the things that was a lot of fun when we were doing the table reads was the awakened vendor
Oh,
who
right.
sells the
Oh my
Jokos that
gosh.
you buy.
And
Yeah.
that poor person trying to have a conversation with them.
My favorite part of that is when she asks if she can get a receipt.
Receipt. He goes, no. That's like the only thing he says other than praise Joko you buy.
She wants
I
to
did see
expense
your-
it to
I
the
did
price.
see your Reddit post, by the way.
Oh yeah. God, that was so much fun. Well, and I think we had, God, who was it? The actors who do it, man, they'll come to me, but like
You
the
will
actors had fun with
remember
it.
2 hours after the show is over.
Yeah.
Speaking of actors, you know what's kind of cool from the speaking of Joko as well is that Nolan North was
Yeah.
the
Okay.
voice of Joko, which means that he's your player human character
Yep. And Mordermoth.
and the stone dwarf head guy,
Yeah.
Robin,
Robin.
Roban.
Ribbon,
Rogaine.
and
So
he's
it's a lot of running
Mordermoth.
around talking to yourself is what you're telling me.
Yeah,
Well, the
or he's
amazing-
talking to himself.
Like Nolan used to get so much flack from people. Oh, it's like, you know, Nolan's my voice in this game. He's my voice in that game. Whatever. People don't understand that the guy is super versatile. It's usually what ends up happening is people cast him to be Nathan Drake. Like in our game, we want you to sound like
Yeah.
you did in Uncharted, which is fine. I mean, it's a cool character
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
great voice. But Nolan can do so much. Like he does the Penguin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
He
he's
does-
in
he
Arkham
is-
Asylum.
He's one of those people who, like Fred Tatasciore or you know, take
Oh
your
my
pick of
gosh, yeah.
actors who can do a million voices. Nolan can do that too. Just most of the time, people don't ask him to. And whenever we give him a new part, he gets really excited in the booth because he gets to, you know, quote unquote play.
Yeah.
And he just the stuff, you know, everyone's gonna have an opinion on, you know, the Joko treatment. Is he too comedic? Is he not comedic enough or whatever? But he definitely went for like a dark, kind of creepy.
It's
angle,
great too. I
and
love listening to his.
Between the
VO.
performance and the audio processing that the audio team did, it's just you. I think people would be very surprised to know that that's Nolan North also doing that character.
Yeah, I've got to listen to him do some recording once, and it was just one character that he was doing, but in the off times he would just play like you would say and be all over the place, and you're listening to like 3 or 4 different people.
Oh yeah, he's filthy in outtakes too. By the way,
Well,
Most of our
there was
actors-
most
also
of our
that. I
actors are
wasn't gonna mention it.
pretty dirty in between takes.
especially Bram's actor.
Oh God.
It turns out they.
Yeah, I know, and he works on like a children's
Yeah.
like dance competition show or something like that.
It
Sam
turns out
Riegel.
that most
Sam
of them
Riegel.
are.
Oh, they're funny. Well,
Yeah.
we have
Yes.
like I want to say hours of outtakes from all the different actors. So like, you know, John DiMaggio, we have like
Oh Lord.
we had like a 15-minute
Nothing
yeah, I
that
know.
y'all can ever hear
Well, we
on
had
this
cut
show.
it. We'd cut it in half, and it was still a little
He's a
too
naughty
blue,
man.
and we just decided not to
There's
pursue
nothing
it.
we can. This is not salvageable.
Yeah.
No, but there's actually a lot of stuff. We've been talking to Eve about maybe getting another SoundCloud like outtakes thing. It might be kind of fun to work with the audio team and just get another
That
fun
would be amazing.
thing.
We
A lot
should
of
do
times
that,
in
right?
like recording sessions, we have running jokes going with the actors about stuff. And
All right, we are getting close to 1 o'clock, so we should probably wrap it up. But Justin hasn't got to do this yet. What's your favorite thing that you brought back from Guild Wars 1? Maybe a person or a location or an enemy?
Probably just because I worked so much on it. It was probably the Augury Rock location. And I don't know if you've done the jumping puzzle inside yet, but it's get to the top.
ooh, jumping.
Did you do
puzzles.
something to make it easier?
It's not too bad. The designers put in some spawns in there that you have to battle.
Get a
Well, that's a
Springer.
no.
That's easy.
Yeah, that does help quite a lot.
Jumping
Yeah,
mount.
Augury Rock and pretty much everything surrounding that was done so very well. And I like seeing that because, like we said before, it was such a turning point. Everything in there was such a big part of Guild Wars 1. I feel like you guys did a good job bringing things. You were true to the maps. And you did a really good job bringing back the huge story points and then just little things scattered around the map. So, thank you very much, you
I'm
guys.
glad you enjoyed them.
I still am.
Peter did them all for you.
Did he? I knew that was the
Yeah,
case.
most of us, we sit at our desks and we think, what would Ruby like? And then that's what we do.
I don't want to give anybody a chance to refute that, so we're going to call it good. Thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we will see you guys on the next Guild Chat.
Go back Guild Wars 1.